Hey BookTube, it's V. Today I get to talk about The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is actually a book that I got an advanced reader copy off of NetGalley on, so I'd like to thank them and Orbit for getting me a copy of this book before it came out, and I sincerely apologize for the delay. This is a book that I was so excited to get, but at the same time, work and real life stuff was just ramping up, and it was just a lot to handle at once. And one of the great things about this book is that it gave me the escape that I needed, and I am so grateful for that. So The Hunger of the Gods is book 2 in the Bloodsworn Saga, which is John Gwynne's newest, latest, most fun series to date. This is a sequel, so this review is definitely going to have spoilers for book 1. If you haven't seen that review yet, I will link to it down in the description below. But if you're just here because you want to know if this book sort of like falls off after the first one to know if you should get into the series or not, this book takes what the first book did and then just like blows it up. It's so good. There are some things that I am going to complain about, but all in all, this book was beautiful and I had so much fun reading it. This review is going to be spoiler-free for book 2, The Hunger of the Gods, so let's get on with it. First of all, let's check out this cover, and I'm going to put a full color version on the screen just because I am cheap and have the normal non-color Kindle. So right off the bat, we have a very, very similar art style to the first one, and I really hope that they don't switch artists midway through the series because 1, I know a lot of y'all like to collect a series and have all of the covers look the same, and 2, oh my god, this is such a nice cover. Right off the bat, you have something big and scary and snarling staring at you on the cover, and this doesn't seem like a creature that I want to get into an argument with, so I'm just going to respect it. It's so much bigger than the people down at the bottom of the cover, so that just shows you, like, this is probably a god or something that is extremely big and powerful, and you don't want to piss it off. It's basically saying, hey, come read this book. One of my favorite things about this book is how it took what happened in book 1 and then just completely expanded on everything in the world. In book 1, the world felt really, really small, and it slowly expanded as we were able to travel out of the little immediate area that Orca and her family lived in. And now we realize that there has been a lot more at play. I mean, we knew that from book 1. There has to be some sort of conspiracy, but now we're just starting to realize, like, what that conspiracy is. Why was it so important for Brecca to get taken? And what's going on with, like, Ratha? You know, there's just a lot of unanswered questions, and we're getting around to it, and it just, like, blows your mind. We also get more fight scenes, and I love me a good fight scene, because just having all that action and just all that pent-up rage getting taken out on something for the greater good just makes me feel happy on the inside. It might sound really, really weird, but darker books with a lot of fight scenes are very, very comforting to me. They make me feel good. They make me feel warm and cozy on the inside. And it's been a rough couple months, so I really, really appreciated just seeing Orca and Elvar and everybody just wailing on everybody else, and touched my heart. At the end of book 1, Lifraka gets awakened, and we know that bad stuff is going to happen. A lot of times in stories, you get this big cataclysmic thing, and by the end of that book, it's averted. Or by the end of that book, something bad happens, but still kind of redeemable. This one, you really get the oh shit feelings. It's like, this big old dragon is going around, and it has an army, and everything is about to fall apart. And all the major players know this. It's like Queen Helka knows it, all the other Jarls that she's trying to either conquer or bring to her side know it, and the stakes just got so much higher than in the first book, but it felt like a really natural progression at the same time because it was well set up in the first place. And that's really impressive because at the end of the first book, you have these really high stakes already. You've released the goddess, you've gotten this cataclysmic thing that's going to ruin everything, and yet you still have room to grow. If you've been on my channel for a while, you know I kind of have a flair for the thematic. I really, really like looking at the thematic elements in stories. And without going into spoilers for what happens at the end of this book, we're going to talk about some of that now. Again, if you haven't read book 1, you really need to turn off this video and go watch my review for book 1, and then go read book 1. Seriously, it's totally worth your time. Go do it. Just trust me on this one. First of all, this book rattled around my thought cage sort of like 300. I could totally see someone in Hollywood deciding to adapt the Bloodsworn Saga into a trilogy of movies, or maybe a miniseries like Game of Thrones, and then doing it in the style of 300 because there's so much CGI and you just sort of embrace that you're going to have a little bit of weird stuff going on with that. And so you just have this magical land that's just like enveloping the characters, and oh, it would be so good. But the biggest theme that I got out of this book is the question of who is actually the villain. One of our heroes, Elvar, is actually the daughter of a Jarl who forces a lot of the Tainted to work for him against their will. It's a word I'm thinking about but not going to use because I don't want to get demonetized one day. And Elvar actually keeps up this tradition. to help a tainted woman that she promised that she'd help in book 1, even against super powerful beings, which was quite a rude awakening for them. Brior gets his own point of view chapters in this book, and it's actually kind of shocking, because on one hand, he betrays Elvar, he betrayed people that we see as heroes, and yet you find out that he was actually infiltrating the Bloodsworn in order to help Lifraka get reawoken again and to help the Raven Feeders support her because they're all tainted, and they want to end the whole thrall system that's going on in this world. And that is a very noble cause, because the thralls are basically being used as forced labor, and that is really, really bad. It's also kind of weird that Orca would be working against Ligrafa, because Ligrafa's goals are basically the same. Orca left and decided to just live out in the middle of nowhere and keep to herself because she thought that that was the safest thing to do for her family, for her son. Basically, she tried to ignore the problem and just decide to make it go away on her own like that. But the world keeps moving on, and there's people who want to control the tainted, and there's always bad stuff going on, and you can't really just run from that, because it'll come to your door, knock it down, burn it down, and take everything you love, like in book 1. And it's not to say that the gods are completely innocent, like they just eat people because they want to, and that's also wrong. But I wonder where the world is going in this book. Are we going to have Lifraka succeed and have her own, like, reign of terror? Are we going to have Elvar succeed and have her own reign of terror where the thrall system stays in place? Or are we going to have something that's sort of in between where the thrall system goes away and everybody gets to live in peace? I don't think the latter is going to happen just because this is a darker fantasy book and things are not going to be tied up in a pretty bow like that, but I'm really excited to see where the story goes going forward. The other point of view character is Guthvar, and I hate this character, but he also became one of my favorite POV characters to follow. Guthvar is very, very scheming. He kind of reminds me of Benny from the movie The Mummy. Not the Tom Cruise one, the one with Brendan Fraser in his prime. He's a character that'll switch sides just to survive, and he comes off as being very scheming and self-important and not a great guy, but at the same time, he's probably just doing the best he could. This guy understands that he's in way over his head, and even though he's a terrible person, I don't know if I personally could have done any better in his situation. His chapters are full of political intrigue and give us a view into sort of the big picture leadery stuff that's going on because of who his aunt is. Now for the things that I wasn't such a fan of. I think my biggest complaint is that there were parts of this book that were paced perfectly, where I was on the edge of my seat, and then other parts that were really, really slow. All in all, I really enjoyed this book, but it was a chonker. It was almost 700 pages, and there were some parts where I wished it would have just moved along a little bit more. But those moments when a lot of things came together, the payoff, mwah, it was beautiful. Side note, I also really, really appreciated that there was sort of a Cliff Notes version of what happened in book 1 at the very beginning of this book. So instead of going back and reading the entire book 1 before I started book 2, I was able to read like 5 pages of basically plot summaries and remembering what everybody's names were. There was actually a completely separate guide to who all the players were and how to pronounce names and say things. And that was really, really helpful, because I didn't know how to pronounce Guthvar's name. I didn't know how to pronounce Rakia's name. It's not Rokia, it's Rakia, the rat god. Also, I didn't like the ending, but that's just because it featured something very sad happening to a character that I very, very, very much appreciate and am attached to. But I'm not going to find out until book 3, so I'm just going to have to keep rolling that around in my thought cage. I said this was supposed to be a section of the things that I didn't really like, but there was really only one thing, so sorry? Not sorry? Anyways, like, I was gushing earlier about this book before I even got into my review, and now y'all know why. This book was just so well put together. You've got the Norse mythology, you've got your fight scenes, you've got your underlying thematic issues that just keep you thinking about things, and this is sort of a combination that really, really makes me happy. So I'm very, very grateful that I got to read this book, and I really hope that y'all will pick up the series too. If you like what I do, please hit the subscribe button and join the Caffeination. We'd love to have you. I post bookish videos whenever I can get around to them because I am a busy adult with many important things to do. Like, share, subscribe on all your social media, and if you think that I suck at this, leave me a comment down below and I'll try to suck better next time. Bye!